I think I got brain damage from AI. Let me explain. It's 1 a.m. in Tokyo. I'm hanging out with friends from my hostel outside of Tokyo Tower. The cops roll up. The Tokyo Tower is closed, they say, and ask my mate what we're doing there. He tells them we just wanted to take his new van out for a spin. That didn't convince them. The cops start searching the van. They find a toolbox underneath the driver's seat. They open it. One of the cops pulls out a pair of scissors and starts going off to my mate about how they're too long. He tries to explain that the van is used and he didn't even know the toolbox was there. But he's not a carpenter. Guess what happens next? Motherfuckers were like, we all gotta go down to the station now for questioning. A couple more cop cars show up and shove all 8 of us in. I get into one of them with 2 other mates and the cop, and I'm thinking to myself, this is kind of as exciting as it is fucked. On the way to the station, the cars split up, and I'm like, okay. Then, all of a sudden, the cop pulls over to the side of the busy road, and I get this little pang of unease, like, what the fuck? I look over his shoulder, and dude's looking at the GPS with a bewildered look on his face, pressing buttons frantically. My friend chimes in like, I think he's lost. And I'm just sitting there thinking, this fucking guy needs GPS to get back to his own station? Bro, the station was like 10 miles away. Needless to say, after he stares at the GPS a couple different ways, he figures it out by calling one of his coworkers, and we're back on our way to the station. Bro needed 2 devices because he couldn't remember himself. The rest of the night was low-level boring. We sat on a bench while they interrogated my friend, and then let us go. Thank fuck they had somebody drive his van down there because they sure as shit weren't gonna get us back to the hostel with their shoddy GPS. Guess what year it was? 2007. That cop's organic navigation was cooked and he'd probably been using GPS for years. I've been using GPT for 3 years. Where does that leave me? Probably with low-grade brain damage. Seriously though, how the fuck am I supposed to get back to the station without GPT or Claude? Car navigation's been around for a hot minute. But guess who invented it? Japan. Honda shipped the Electro Gyrocator in 1981 as a dealer option on the Accord. And it had a 20-pound gyroscope unit that plotted your position on transparent map sheets. Mazda put the world's first GPS nav into the 1990 Eunos Cosmo, Japan only. Built by Mitsubishi Electric with Zenrin maps. Toyota followed suit shortly after. And by the early 2000s, the things were cheap enough for mass penetration. By the time I showed up on the scene, pretty much everybody had GPS in their cars, and it seemed like most people couldn't find their way around the corner without it. So I looked it up because I wanted to know if I was just being a dick about that cop. Dahmani and Bohbot, 2020. Scientific reports. They took 50 regular drivers and measured lifetime GPS use against spatial memory. Turns out, with more GPS in your life, you've got worse navigation without it. Sure, we could have all guessed that one. Here's the sauce, though. They went back 3 years later and retested 13 of the 50 people. A small sample, sure. But they found that people who used more GPS in those 3 years were worse off. And they checked whether heavy GPS users just started out with a shit sense of direction. Nope. That's not what the numbers said. So the arrow points the opposite way from what you'd assume. That cop wasn't just some dumbass who needed a machine. He was a guy who had a machine for years until the part of him that knew Tokyo just checked out. So then I went digging for the same thing with AI. And sure enough, MIT Media Lab came with the goods. They put EEG caps on 54 people while they wrote an essay. One group used ChatGPT, The other one used Google search, and one used nothing but their own meat. The brain-only group lit up the most. The Googlers in the middle, and the ChatGPTers had the weakest connectivity out of anybody. That's not even the fucked up part, though. They asked people to quote their own essay back. The ChatGPT group couldn't do it. They turned it in, but they couldn't recall what was in it. They also reported the lowest sense of ownership, like it wasn't even theirs. Everybody reported that story as, ChatGPT gives you brain damage. But technically, it doesn't say that. Only 18 out of the 54 people stuck around for the next part of the test where they swapped groups. It turns out that the people who used ChatGPT's connectivity was still lower. The part everybody left out is that 18 out of 54 is a small sample, but still. So no cap, having a robot do your work isn't damage. It's just you not working. There's a paper from 1978 that found you remember what you generate and forget what you just read. 50 fucking years old. And our dumbasses went and built a machine that does the generating. I have a whole video about it called AI is Multiplying Stupid that covers this effect if you want to dive into the details. And yeah, I'm not going to tell you to stop using AI. I'm not going to lie, I got 4 agents and tabs working for me right now. But that cop did know where his station was once. Nobody took it from him. He just stopped driving there himself, and one day it was gone. Dude didn't even find out until there were 3 gaijin in his back seat at 2 a.m. watching him mash buttons on a screen. That bewildered face is still in my memories living rent-free. Probably because I keep noticing how many tabs I have open. I think the only thing I can do is pick a couple of routes I still want to drive myself and make some new connections in my brain every once in a while.